Recently, Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury for the United States, was interviewed on the news, and she was asked about inflation and what we can expect moving forward. And let's take a look at her response.
Well, you expect it to come down, but prices are going to go up before they go down, right? Again, most economists expect the inflation rate to move up to around 7% by the end of the year. Does that sound about right to you?
Well, we've had high inflation in the first half of this year, and that locks in high inflation really for the entire year.
So as she states in the interview, what we can expect is at least a 7% inflation rate throughout the rest of the year and potentially continuing for the next 2 years. And this raises a question for investors. What am I supposed to do in the meantime with these record inflation numbers? And so in today's video, what I want to talk about is 3 avenues you can put your money to make sure that you're getting the best return on investment. But before we get into this list, make sure that you are subscribed and that you smash that bell notification to be notified every single time I'm putting out a new video. And of course, tickle that like button as well, as it helps with the YouTube algorithm and gets this message out to other investors as well, so that we can create a community of people that are having their money work for them. But let's go ahead and talk about these 3 things that I'm looking at that should help to hedge against these record inflation numbers that we're seeing right now. The first investment that I want to talk about should come as no surprise, and this is gold. And why gold? Throughout our society, we've always used gold as one of the most consistent stores of value. And that's never been more important than with what we're seeing in today's society, with record high inflation numbers. And of course, with the fact that $3 trillion has been wiped out of retirement accounts in 6 short months, investors tend to turn to gold to hedge against losses. And when we start to see the stock market dip as much as it has recently, upwards of 70% in some cases, now is the most important time for us to make sure that we're hedging against those losses that we're seeing right now and ultimately protect our retirement investment for the long run. And if we take a look at the price of gold over the past 20 years, what we can see is 20 years ago, it was at $321.69 an ounce. If we compare that to modern day prices, that price has jumped up to $1836.81 per ounce. So that's an increase of $1,500 over the course of the past 20 years, which is pretty good considering all the downturns that we've seen in that short period of time. And if we break those numbers down a little further, we actually saw gold's biggest jump happen immediately after the economic collapse of 2008. And what we saw is the price went from $732.55 to $1,837.68 in a matter of 3 short years. So if we compare what could potentially happen in 2022 to 3 or 4 years down the road, we could see another drastic jump like we saw similar to the crash of 2008. So with these numbers, we can see that when we are in a downward spiral, much like we are right now, investors tend to turn to gold as a safe haven and a hedge against loss until we start to gain our footing and regain that stability for us to go back in an upward type direction. Next, staying with the hard asset theme, I'm going to name one that doesn't get a lot of recognition, but I was lucky enough to be around the industry, so I can see this being a huge market not only right now, but down the road as well. This would be the used car / collector car market. And you might be saying to yourself, are you crazy? Cars only lose their value when you buy them. And that is not entirely true. Although I will say there are a lot of used vehicles out there that tend to depreciate rapidly in value if you know how to pick the right vehicles this could be a pretty lucrative investment for you in regards to its longevity and how much some of these used cars are actually averaging for rate of return. And so really there's two factors that I look at with this used car collector car market. The first one is going to be historical numbers. And this one I had the opportunity of being around because I was a car detailer and I was invited to some of these auctions. And seeing how much collectors were willing to pay for these cars was something almost out of a fairy tale, because these were cars that I would dream about as a kid that really weren't going for too much at the time. But you're looking at what these collectors are paying for these cars now, and you start to kick yourself saying, I used to have that car and I wish I would have held on to it, because what they're going for now as compared to what they were going for is ridiculous. And so if we take a look at the numbers, these are numbers that I've gotten from Car Gurus as well as Haggerty. And so we'll take a look at a reasonable car, reasonable being something that the average everyday person can afford. And then we'll take a look at the higher end type collector cars. This might be something that's out of reach for you, but this will show you, if you compare two different markets, what the rate of return has been for these used car / collector car markets. So if we take a look at BMW over the past 10 years, we can see an increase of used car value of 17%, which is pretty good considering that the S&P 500 averages about 8% return on investment. This goes to show you that the used car market really gained a lot of steam with car collectors and what they were wanting to put their money into from a hard asset standpoint. And then if we take a look at something more higher end like a Ferrari increased 26% over that same time period. So again, a lot of investors or car collectors want to put their money into a hard asset and something they feel comfortable with. So as uncommon as it may be, the used car market seems to be something that investors are willing to put their money into and something that will hold their value over time. And the next point, and this is more speculation than anything, but I am a car person. I've been around cars my entire life. And what we're starting to see from a society standpoint is a lot of these world governments are wanting to transition from internal combustion engines over to electric vehicles. That's why we're seeing the increase in gas prices, but also we're seeing legislation being passed in the European Union, for instance. They want to stop using internal combustion engines by 2030. The United States wants to stop manufacturing internal combustion engines by 2035. And if you're a car enthusiast like myself or a car collector, you enjoy the sound and the feel of internal combustion engines, the V8s, the V10s, the V12s. And knowing that these are going to go by the wayside and they're going to be harder and harder to come by as time progresses, what you start to realize is that people are going to pay a premium for these V8s, for these V10s, and for these V12s. And as they become more and more scarce, the value of them is only going to increase more and more over time. So I think this is a market that isn't being talked about very much, but as we start to eliminate internal combustion engines, we're really going to start to see the price of these internal combustion engines go up more and more, and that return on investment is only going to become more lucrative as time passes. And the last thing that I want to talk about isn't so much of an investment, but it is something that will leave you with peace of mind and will also help you get through this recession that we're ultimately going to find ourselves in. And this is paying off debt. A lot of times when the market is going up, people will focus on putting that extra money that they have into investments. And that tends to be a really good idea. And what'll happen and what we're starting to see is a reverse type effect where people are hoarding a lot more cash due to the uncertainty of the market. And what can be really helpful moving forward for a lot of people, especially with these record inflations that we're seeing, is to free up as much cash as possible. And so what might be the best strategy for some is to pay off that high interest that you may have. And the example obviously is going to be things like credit cards. A lot of times these credit cards are actually on variable rates. So what you'll start to notice is your minimum payments, if you are paying the minimums on your credit cards, will start to go up more and more as the interest rates go up on them. What that ultimately does is take more out of your pocket and makes it harder for you to save. And so during times of record inflations and downturns in the economy like we're seeing, it's important for you to save as much money as possible. And that can become an increasingly difficult task if your credit card payments are only going up. So paying off your debt and just basically taking that chunk of money that you're wanting to save and paying off those credit cards might be a better option for you than just paying those minimums. And ultimately what that's going to do is ultimately set you up for success in the long term as well, because what that'll give you the opportunity to do is not only get out of debt and have that peace of mind quicker, but also have that nest egg of savings ready to deploy for when these markets hit their bottoms. Now you can invest into these hard assets like gold and like used cars and collector cars, if that's what you want to do, and ultimately the stock market and index funds. And if you have the ability to do so, you're going to reap the rewards as we gain back the 60, 70, 80% losses that we've seen in the market in this short period of time. So paying off debt is something that should be on the forefront of pretty much everybody's investment journey to help them get through these hard economic times that we're seeing right now. So those are 3 areas that you could focus on during our time of economic crisis that we're seeing right now. And if you did enjoy this video and you got a lot of good information out of it, make sure that you give this video a big thumbs up. Other than that, we are building a community of subscribers and people that want to have their dollar stretch further. So if you want to be part of that community, we would love to have you. Make sure that you smash that subscribe button and turn on that bell notification, because I am dropping money news almost every day, and I'm dropping a YouTube video every single week to help you understand what's going on in the economy and ultimately set you up for success moving forward. So it's definitely something that you want to have your bell notifications on to make sure that you know every single time one of these videos is dropped. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day.